Hey guys, and welcome back to the Warwick F1 show. This is episode 13 of the 2025 season, and in this one today, we're going to be doing a nice little refresh of the news that has been going around the paddock over the last month, or since our last episode. I'm your host for this one, Anwar, and in this episode, I'm joined by two returning guests, Daniel and Lucy. Thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate that a lot. Let's start. I feel the most appropriate place to start, I guess, is kind of the one that is something that's been floating around the paddock for a good while now, and that is the 11th team on the F1 grid. Now, we've had Andretti come along, try their hand, and now we've got a confirmation that Cadillac will be entering the sport in 2026. Firstly, I want to get both of your reactions in terms of this finally coming over the line. What's our feelings? Do we think this is a good addition to the sport and such? We'll start with you, Daniel. What are your thoughts?
I think it's great, to be honest. The whole point of the 26 regulation change was, of course, to attract more manufacturers, and Cadillac being a huge American brand as it is with the parent company of General Motors, I think it's significant for the sporting and financial side of Formula One to kind of secure that partnership. It's weird, isn't it? Because Andretti seem to be they seem to close the door quite firmly on Andretti with a no, and not much seems to have changed except the backing. Andretti's kind of taken a back seat. Michael Andretti has kind of stepped aside as spearheading that project, and with Cadillac coming in, it's kind of seen as adding more to the pie, as it were, instead of taking another slot of it away from the other teams, which is why previously vocal team principals like James Vowles were like, we don't want them here stealing our money, basically, but instead they're contributing with the anti-dilution fee and everything. So, and also from a fan's point of view, it will be great to see two more cars on the grid, right? We haven't seen that for a few years now, so I think it's just more action if they're competitive, of course, which is a big if. But yeah, can't wait to see what we get with them.
Lucy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm also really excited. I mean, to be honest, like ever since kind of Andretti started talking about that they wanted to get in, I kind of got attached to the idea that there could be 11 teams on the grid, and I'm excited it's finally come to fruition. Even through Cadillac, I'm sure from F1's managing body itself, they've really been trying to expand their influence in America, and so the fact that it's an American team and like an established American team, i.e. not Haas, that are joining will hopefully they'll feel like that is therefore kind of a market they've properly entered into. I also think, it's useful. I think that General Motors have also maybe been approved, or at least are in talks to approve, I can't remember exactly, as a engine supplier for 29.
Yep, and that's been confirmed.
So that's been confirmed. Fantastic. So that's as well interesting because obviously Renault with Alpine are stepping away from the sport. So it's good to have a variety of engine manufacturers, That's what keeps it interesting, and hopefully they'll be competitive, or if not, at least Sauber has someone to fight with now.
It really reminds me of what the sport used to be in the early 2010s, when we had 12 different teams. At a certain point, we had 4 different engine manufacturers. So we had Cosworth back in the day, and I think this means that we're going to have a really interesting looking grid, or much more mainstream looking grid coming into next year, because ultimately we're going to have Cadillac, which I feel if you are into cars, you kind of are aware of them, and you're also going to have Audi there as well. So I think in terms of big names, we are getting quite a few into the sport, which is always a good thing. The question I want to ask now is, what do we expect from them, and should we kind of be cautious with what we hope from them?
From Cadillac?
Yes.
I think it's tough because
obviously it's going to be really tough because we've got no background.
Even the power units, right?
Yeah.
They're using a Ferrari power unit. We don't know how that's going to get on with the
new engine regulations and such,
and the just the OEM Ferrari themselves with their main team. Like how's the power unit and the chassis development going with them? We don't know. Obviously, we hear rumours that Mercedes are strong. Obviously, maybe Cadillac are kind of opposed to that and going with Ferrari, which I think is an interesting choice. But at the same time, obviously, we don't want kind of Mercedes to have the majority of the teams in their pocket, as it were, with the with the engines. So I am expecting a rather anonymous start, I'd say. I'm not expecting many points at all, to be honest.
And Lisa, do you think we should be really expecting anything from them, or should we just be at this point in time, I guess, happy that they're there?
I think that we kind of have to start off being happy that they're there. I think that especially being that there's an extra team, but like there's not extra points. It's not the points table's been elongated. It is kind of unlikely that they will end up in the points, be it kind of unless they've got like a really great car. Like it's just statistically less likely. And yeah, I think that we kind of just have to hope that they get established within the sport and kind of because we want them to stick around because we just don't want them to kind of be pushed out early. I think, yeah, it's not like Audi who are taking over an existing team. It's sort of a new team from scratch. And so I kind of just hope that like the sport does kind of, which hopefully it will. I think the fans are excited as far as I know, will like embrace there being an 11th team and they won't end up getting pushed out.
And I think the thing that kind of inspires confidence on my end is the fact that we have this general motive kind of news about them confirming their engine commitment to 29. It tells me that they're willing to stay. And I think that's something that is also a very important thing to consider is when we had a lot of big names in the sport in the late O's, so 06, 07, 08, we had a lot of big teams, BMW, we had Toyota, and it fell flat because they weren't 100% committed to the sport. And the fact that we've at least got 3 years of a commitment minimum is probably going to be a lot more than that, given the fact that they're very unlikely to give up on an engine within a year. I think that tells me that they're committed to the sport and willing to keep staying, which is an important thing too. I think the natural extension of having Cadillac and the natural benefit is the fact that we're going to have 2 more seats on the grid. Do we feel that this is going to be very good for junior Formula E and I guess people around the paddock that we've got another extra 2 seats?
Just one quick thing about the engines before that is that I also remembered that Toyota are coming back, aren't they? They're partnering with Haas, aren't they?
Well,
or at least they're in plans.
Yeah, so it's.
I don't know whether they're making engines, but again, we've got more names coming back to the grid, so surely that's a good thing. I don't know whether it'll be most beneficial for the junior Formula E or for kind of it's maybe more established drivers who have like lost their seats and then maybe looking to get back because obviously coming in as a new team, Cadillac don't have like a driver academy or anything, so it's not they don't have sort of a natural pool of like F2 drivers that they can go and say here's your F1 seat now, but who knows.
Yeah, there are some kind of whispers around the drivers that they could be looking into. Obviously, quite a while ago, there was the American Colton Herta, who was rumored to be kind of in the running. We've got obviously the rumors of Sergio Perez, or him confirming that he's been approached by a few teams in sort of informally looking for a way back into the sport. So maybe that's a possible avenue for him. Maybe it's a risk, but maybe it's one they're willing to take. But on the junior Formula E as well, you know, we've seen so many rookies come in over the past year, and I can't think of any of them really who have kind of faltered. Even the ones we've got now, they're all looking promising. Colapinto came in, which was a big win for the Williams Driver Academy, I'd say in general, because they needed a win at the time. So, you know, we've got promising drivers like Arvid Lindblad. I mean, he's a Red Bull Junior driver, but if the situation were to shuffle around, he could be worked in to the Red Bull Junior team maybe. So I think it's a very fluid driver dynamic because of this 11th team that we've got. But it should be interesting to see how it shakes out.
I mean, yeah, we see people moving from driver academies all the time, or like being in one team's driver academy and then going to a different team, like Bortoletto going from McLaren's junior team to being at Sauber, or you know Colapinto going from Williams to Alpine, and then Victor Martin's doing the opposite. So there's definitely fluidity. Like if there's fluidity on the grid already, then kind of having a vacuum where like the young drivers, where they're kind of like at McLaren, where it's kind of obvious that they're happy with their driver lineup, where they could gravitate towards and like aim for a seat there instead, even if like with McLaren's backing, even if they don't have the option of a seat at like the team that they're currently part of the academy of.
Yeah, in terms of some of the names that have been floated around, we've seen IndyCar drivers, and I think we've always felt that with these new teams, there should be like a voice of reason and a little bit more of an older voice. And this kind of is a nice segue to the news that Perez has been approached. We don't know how formally or informally this approach has become, but it tells me that he's at least in the discussion for a seat. Would we think that Cadillac is probably his best bet at a seat?
Yeah, I said it's a risk, and I think it is a risk because we've seen before drivers who haven't quite performed in the team where they've left voluntarily or they've been removed by the management. They pick up these habits that they've kind of accumulated over their time in that team, and that's because they've had to kind of evolve their driving style slightly to suit the specifics of that car, like Daniel Ricciardo at McLaren, for example, as well as Perez at Red Bull. So I think it's a gamble because Ricciardo never seemed to fully find his mojo in that RB the same way that he was pre-McLaren. So in a way, we don't know how that Cadillac's going to handle, obviously, and who it's going to suit, what it's going to be like, if it's even going to be competitive. But in terms of an experienced hand, sure, he can guide the team in a direction maybe and give them tailored feedback. But in terms of results, I think it's a big risk.
Yeah, I definitely think that there are those problems. I also think for Perez that, you know, given like Red Bull's slight car development and car handling struggles, he's maybe like in terms of his confidence, that might have sort of been restored compared to when he was considered an option, like maybe while he was still at Red Bull. He's probably the fact that the car has proven a little undrivable, has probably, you know, raised his profile for teams like Cadillac in that it may have kind of shown that, oh, perhaps the car balance did have something to do with it and made him kind of a more like feasible prospect for those teams, which if he wants to come back to the grid can't hurt his chances.
I think there's also the sponsorship element of it too, because ultimately, with Cadillac, with Cadillac being a US based company, they've got bases in Fishers, which is in Indiana, Charlotte in North Carolina, and Warren, and they also have a primary UK base too. I think that it feels like a little bit of a slam dunk in terms of getting some of the South American market, because we've seen how fanatic Colapinto's fans were in his short stint in Formula One so far. So I think it'd be a great way to try and capitalise that from their perspective too. Let's move the discussion on now to more drive-related news, and I guess the news about Verstappen being a little bit unsettled. Now we saw after what Grand Prix was it? It was
Bahrain, I think.
Yes,
that's the one. Because that was the one where Red Bull were like seventh.
Yes, that would make sense. Where Verstappen's manager went and had a little bit of a beef with Helmut Marko, and Helmut Marko came out after and said he was concerned that they might lose him. Do we think this is really a likely thing, or is this, do you think, some type of contractual, some type of negotiation play, I guess?
I wouldn't say it's a negotiation play. I think it seems quite real to me. Verstappen has voiced it several times. He's not one to play the games with the contracts and kind of bluffing. I think he does feel like this situation is getting worse. At Red Bull specifically, their car worries, obviously the politics that are at play in that team that he doesn't particularly like among the management. So from that perspective, it seems reasonable from his perspective to shop around. There's no harm in evaluating the prospects of possible teams, seeing what's on the market, what kind of figures are being astronomical figures that are being thrown around at the moment, specifically related to Aston Martin. But just from a fan's point of view, Max Verstappen is clearly approaching the status of one of the greatest of all time, right? I think, with some of the achievements that he's pulled off. And
undeniably, right?
Undeniably.
Yeah, I don't think that's incredible.
And
really.
For me, when you look at some of the greatest drivers, they have managed to extract the most from their cars and perform miracles with several different teams. And I think with Verstappen, it's important that we see that too. I'd love to see that from Max. Because people say all the time, oh, the car's just tailored to him, it's his car. Any driver can do great things when they have a car built for them. So I'd kind of like to see Max almost prove them wrong in a way and adapt to a different beast and conquer the competition in that as well. I think it's important for his legacy and the mark he leaves and his name leaves on this sport when he eventually decides to leave. So for me, I don't think he's going to leave Red Bull just yet. Obviously, that car isn't quite good enough to win races, but when he is on top form and the track slightly suits better, he can put it in a position to win those races. And I think that's what he's banking on at the moment. So I don't think he's seriously considering leaving yet. But we'll have to see how next year's competitiveness goes as well.
Yeah, I'd say if it's any sort of like kind of trying to sort of like test Red Bull or sort of like kind of try and prompt them into changing something, I don't think it's contract related, because he's got a contract until 2028, which I think when it was settled he kind of didn't seem like unhappy about it or anything. I think if anything he's looking around because there are all the rumours about for the new engines next year, about maybe Mercedes engine being the strongest. There's all of the different teams about kind of who could be kind of like strong contenders there, that I think if he's kind of if he's not genuinely looking around, it's to try and kind of prompt Red Bull into taking some car development steps. Maybe he's not happy with the way that development program's looking right now, and he's trying to sort of indicate that he would be willing to leave for a team where he could have maybe where the development was maybe more in a direction that he liked, as opposed to trying to get a better contract or anything like that.
I think the closest link obviously has been to the Aston Martin team, and we've seen the money that they've thrown at Adrian Newey, for example. Do we think Verstappen's the type of person to really be swayed by a significant financial sum? Because from my perspective, I don't see that being the turning point. It might be a thing where he would like to work with Newey again, but that seems like the only thread that he can kind of pull on.
True, that on the Honda engine, of course, he's quite happy with the Honda power unit, from what I understand. But I think winning is priceless for Max Verstappen. He can't put a figure on the feeling of standing on the top step and having crushed his opposition by about 20 seconds. That's what matters most to him. I think he enjoys dominating more than he does racing other people, to be honest, which as a racer is an interesting philosophy. But Aston Martin, they're putting all these blocks in place. But if I were Max, I'd be very cautious about what's happening now. I'd be keeping an eye on what's happening now, because really they're the same group of people going into next year. I know you've got a couple of personnel changes, and they are significant ones. But all in all, it's going to be same wind tunnel unit, same kind of operational group trackside as well from that perspective. And he has to kind of evaluate all those factors and see how he would gel and kind of slot into their kind of hierarchy and what they've got going on there. And I think it would be a huge change for him. So you have to seriously consider it as a possible option. Obviously, it is possible, but not quite likely, I'd say, yet.
And the other thing that kind of has not helped him in terms of making this decision was the fact that Mercedes have obviously are very close, or if not have announced that they are re-signing George Russell on a new deal. I don't think it's been announced.
I don't think it's been officially announced yet. I think the rumours are just all that it's happened.
It is essentially done. It's a done deal. It needs to be announced, basically, right? So that obviously takes away one option for him, and that's probably one of the more appealing options.
Yeah,
right?
In a way, if that doesn't get announced, we could probably take that as a symbol that maybe Max is genuinely looking to go to Mercedes, because I can really think of that being the only reason why they might delay a deal that otherwise seems to be pretty sealed.
I mean, a lot of people I was looking around, people were like, how could you replace Russell in that case, right? I don't know, maybe it's just my love for competition, but in my head, if there's an upgrade available, regardless of how good the initial driver is, we can all agree Verstappen is probably an upgrade on George Russell, right? So I could see this from Mercedes' perspective why they would go for it.
The one thing with the Mercedes thing though is that they seem very keen on effectively nurturing Antonelli to be the next Verstappen, and so for that they kind of need if they get Verstappen kind of in Mercedes who would want to kind of mold the car to his driving style, that would probably, I don't know what Kimi Antonelli's driving style exactly is, but that would most likely hinder Antonelli's driving style, which does then kind of go against their aim of turning him into sort of the new Max Verstappen.
Yeah, particularly if there is a clash there, right? I guess the other point, the other side of that coin, is that he's just entered the sport, so he's more impressionable. But then I guess that's something that can work against him. But we'll wait and see in terms of whether Verstappen does actually exit the sport, or do we think? I'll ask you this here, both of you now. If I were to tell you, you've got to make a prediction as to where he is next year. Where is he?
Oh, Red Bull.
Yeah, Red Bull, 100%.
I also agree. I think it's such a small chance of him. It's more likely he leaves the sport, but even then, I don't see it.
I think it comes a lot more into question for 2027 though. Once he sees the pecking order in 2026, I think he's got enough swaying power to just say, "I want to go there."
And I think any team would be stupid not to take him.
Yeah. I think at most, if not 27, then if there's contract shenanigans or anything, then definitely when his contract is up in 28, if Red Bull aren't up there in the pecking order, he will be looking elsewhere.
He has said quite firmly, though, that he does. This was a couple of years ago, but he said he really doesn't have much intention of sticking around after 28, after his contract's done. So there's that to consider as well. He's going to have a young family soon. What does that do? He wants to try other racing projects that aren't so strenuous as a 24 race calendar. So
not the 24 race.
Yeah.
Well, let's move the discussion on now to the 2026. Right, we've kind of referred to it and hinted at it, but the noises that are being made about it. Obviously, we kind of got the confirmation that we're going to be pushing through with this set of regulation. There was a bit of noise about V8 and stuff like that, and going back to what it used to be. But those have been shelved. We are officially going to the 2026 regs next year, and we've pushed it through. But it doesn't sound very good. Why are we worried at all about some of the noises being made?
Look, I think people have a reason to be worried, but I think once 2026 comes around, these are the smartest people in the world, basically, in the factories and trackside teams, and in the FIA as well. They're going to have their solutions all sorted out by the time the preseason testing comes around. And if they don't, I think they're going to find a fix pretty quickly based on the data that they're going to have from running the cars. Obviously, all the talks about right now about kind of running out of the energy down the straight and things like that. So they kind of have some proposed changes that they can put into effect already, which is kind of putting the internal combustion engine power up, as opposed in ratio kind of to the electrical power. So it would be kind of, instead of a 50-50 ratio, it's a 64-36 from the combustion engine side. So that means that they'll be using the battery less as a result. And that means that they won't run out halfway down the Monza straight, for example, because they're using the battery less. So that can be a possible solution. But they're brainstorming. I have faith that they're gonna sort it out. I think.
Just to kind of give the viewers a little bit more of a look into what these regulations mean and what's changing. These comes as part of F1's kind of move to become more environmentally friendly. So they're making the cars a lot lighter, more agile. But now we've got that 50-50 split that Daniel was talking about between combustion and electric motors. But we have had concerns, and we've seen it. Well, we haven't seen it, but teams are seeing problems about the engine losing a significant amount of horsepower midway down the Monza straight, which obviously would be very good and very quick. People have been saying that the F2 cars might be even quicker, which I think is a little bit of an exaggeration in truth, but it's not exactly a pretty good look. The drivers and team principals alike have also expressed quite a bit of concern. So Lewis Hamilton was worried that they'd be pretty slow. Verstappen was complaining about it being overcomplicating the sport too. Do we think that if they mess this set of regulations up, this really would affect the public perception and I guess the fanfare around Formula One that's kind of been generated over the last 5 years?
I think that it might. I think it's worth noting though that obviously, because I was, I think, 8 at the time, I don't remember the last big engine changes, which was obviously 2014 with the hybrids. But I think that every regulation change, even the more comparatively minor ones like 22, have their teething problems. So 22 had all the cars like porpoising because of the aero and things like that. And so I think that if the problems are really major, then I think it may make people look at F1 and go, how on earth did that happen? But I think most likely, like Daniel said, they will find solutions, or if they can't, then they will find ways to edit the regulations so that they're kept the same in principle, but are actually kind of functioning okay.
Can you believe, by the way, that one of the actual suggestions was to scrap the 26 regulations and bring in the V10s or something? Because that's the whole reason that these new power unit suppliers have come in. I'd be feeling pretty cheated if I was Audi, for example, and I was told that we were going to get sustainable fuels for 2026, which might still happen with the V10s. But then they're just, oh, no, they're not working. We're switching to something completely new.
Yeah, if I was Honda and halfway through a 50-50 engine and they were like, actually, we'll bring back the V10s, I'd be like, wait, I've built half of this already.
They've spent millions on it. The FIA have uploaded a 250-page technical regulation on their website. Detailing all the specifics of the parts of the engines and the power units and the cars themselves and the chassis. So it would just seem like a huge waste if this theory was not made practical. So, let's not overreact. Let's find a solution. Let's make it work. And if it doesn't, sure, we can introduce a new regulation change a year or two sooner than we were going to anyway. No big deal. But just give these power unit suppliers what they were promised and let them work it out.
Yeah, we are kind of too near to the actual introduction of these regs to kind of have the answer be completely scrap them and go back to the drawing board. It has to, if there are genuine problems, then it has to be, if not solutions, then mitigating those problems as opposed to restarting the whole thing.
I think it's crazy to even think about it. We're ultimately 6 months away from, or about 6 to 8 months away from them truly getting these 26 cars on the track. And we've heard that Williams have already moved their focus onto 26. So if they did end up cancelling these regulations, it would really screw up quite a few teams. Another thing that we didn't mention as well with the regulations, it would be moving away from DRS as a concept, but you would get rid of it and move to active aero, which is something that's been floated for quite a while. And I guess they're looking at 26 as the place to kind of put it in and finally implement it, I guess. I don't know about you guys, but I've watched the sport for a long time and I've kind of become accustomed to DRS. So for whatever reason, I kind of feel a little bit nostalgic about getting rid of it. I always felt it was cool. It's something that is promoted, overtaken. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. Yeah. What was your...
I mean, there's one person who won't be sad about DRS going, and that's Oscar Piastri, given the number of times that he's had DRS problems. I'm sure he's not sad to see it go. But I agree, it is kind of, it'll be weird to not watch, the rear wing of the cars, flip open halfway down a straight and things like that. It'll take some getting used to.
Yeah, I'm used to staring at the timing column and just praying for someone to get, within a second so we can get some DRS, People say that DRS is a gimmick. I certainly wouldn't go that far, I don't think.
It's an overtaking aid in my eyes.
Yeah.
Which I think is completely okay. I don't see that as a gimmick.
Yeah, they've got a new overtake mode, I think, to replace it, but that's not as fun as DRS.
Well, it reminds me of KERS. It reminds me of KERS, which was a button back in the early 2010s.
Yes, true. It's like KERS. But about DRS, it's in the end, Formula One is all about aerodynamics. It's about aerodynamics and the engine. And when you open that rear wing, it's aerodynamics that makes the car go faster, isn't it? So I don't see at all how that's possibly a gimmick. You're right, they have the new override button that they're going to use, which enables them to kind of release all 350 kilowatts of electrical energy to the engine to get closer to the car ahead, which I think is, I don't know. I think that's closer to a gimmick than DRS, if I'm honest.
I think if anything as well, looking at like trying to get new fans into the sport. Obviously, people will still watch it because if they're still overtaking, people will still find it interesting. But if you're somebody who's wanting to get into the sport and also get to grips of like the technical side of it, and you're not that knowledgeable about it, then being able to explain that the DRS is through like aerodynamics, and obviously that's the case, as opposed to it feels more accessible to somebody who doesn't know much about like how the engines work and how the like technical side of the sport works, as to why it benefits overtaking, because like the overtake button, and I don't fully understand the way that it functions, and whereas I kind of do actually get how DRS works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean it's a lot more visible. Like you say, for new fans, it's like, oh, I can see that they're using the overtaking aid because, but if for some reason it's not working or there's a malfunction or something, it's not as easily spottable as it is when there's a DRS malfunction or something. I'd also be interested in how they are going to present it. Are they going to have is it in Formula E where they have like a little lightning bolt next to the driver when they're using the I don't watch Formula E, so I don't know. But
I like watched one Formula E race. I can't remember.
Yeah. But maybe something like that. From a broadcasting point of view, just to make it more visible, who's doing what. But curious to see how that pans out.
Well, I guess we're going to have to wait and see if it is truly the disaster that people are predicting. I want to move on to another bit of 2026 news, and that was the video that has been kind of doing the rounds of the Madrid circuit. It's called the Madring, which is a nameable time, put it that way. But the video didn't inspire a lot of confidence, and I think the other thing that got people talking was the fact that the driver who was doing this simulation of the circuit,
it was
wasn't very good.
It was Mazepin, right? Tell me it was Mazepin.
That's a compliment to Mazepin.
Oh,
right. So I guess, are we excited for the Spanish Grand Prix to move away from Barcelona and to this new street circuit in Madrid?
I mean, to be honest, Barcelona hasn't historically produced very interesting racing, but I think that I think the teams like it as a test circuit and as a circuit that like they're very used to it compared to Madrid, which is another street circuit. I think is it non-permanent or is it like Jeddah where it's like semi-permanent?
I don't know.
I don't know why I'd expect you to know that, but I think that at least most of the drivers I think do prefer the permanent tracks as opposed to the street circuit track.
It's a semi-permanent.
Oh, so it's like Jeddah where it's like half permanent. So I guess that's that. To be honest, I kind of like. I for some reason, despite it being kind of boring, I do have quite a soft spot for Barcelona as a track. I don't know why. I just do.
Fair enough. It's iconic, really, isn't it?
It's
not historically. It's iconic.
So
think about Michael Schumacher.
That's one of the words you could have.
Oh no, maybe that wasn't it. Okay.
It's certainly a trap.
Yes, I think it does get a lot of heat, though, doesn't it? I think the racing has improved slightly since the kind of Mickey Mouse chicane at the end of the lap was removed, because that did.
It's now just one
exactly
smooth curve,
leaping right-hander.
Sets them up for the straight a little bit better.
Exactly that. But yeah, the racing, it's been a bit meh in Barcelona, especially in recent years with the wider cars. Maybe it's another case of Formula One outgrowing the circuits. We'll see in 26 if that's the case. Obviously, the cars are slightly smaller in dimension, not by a whole lot, but it's a step in the right direction, I suppose. But Madrid, I mean, I don't think you can really judge it until we see. Like Vegas, everyone was throwing a lot of heat at Vegas.
Yeah, this is a good point, actually.
Upside down pig, it's going to be a terrible track, and then it produced
Vegas is fun, actually.
the race of 2023.
I also I don't know. I was one of the few who really liked the fact we were going to Vegas. I was really excited for it because I guess I've been to Vegas, so I see the appeal, right?
I like the concept of it. I've never been to Vegas, but I now like the idea that I can have an excuse to go to Vegas, which is just, I want to see where the F1 circuit would usually be.
Yeah, that might be your excuse. I've got a very different excuse to go to Vegas.
Oh, okay.
But we'll move past that. So I guess, are we predicting this is going to? I guess if I ask you now, do you think this is going to be a good racing circuit? Are we going to say yes or no? Just purely based on that visual that we were given.
We are going to say better than Barcelona.
Okay. And do you think that's good enough?
If Barcelona's good enough, then yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying it'll be okay. I don't think it'll be like, we won't go there and the racing will be of such a caliber that everyone immediately calls for it to be taken off the calendar. I reckon that
as long as it's not a Paul Ricard.
Yeah. There's no bright blue painted lines everywhere, which means that at least it won't be taxing on the eyes.
I guess it is, looking at it as, yeah, it's not a great look. But I guess we've seen that it's a pretty tight track in certain areas, the mid-ring. So we're going to have to see, which I don't...
of course.
We need a different name, because otherwise...
Should I call it the Mad Ring? Because that sounds a lot better.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's it.
Because otherwise it's going to be the Spanish GP preview next year, and nobody's going to be able to stop laughing the entire recording session.
Right, so we'll keep it as Mad Ring for now, right? Cool. Let's begin to lock off the show, but I want to touch on one more thing, and that is the rumours surrounding Doohan have kind of they're kind of faltering, aren't they? We're not hearing as much noise anymore.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things. Firstly, I think that while, he's not suddenly taken the Alpine to like a podium or massive or like outperformed Gasly or anything like that, he's been a pretty solid driver, Yes, he's had a couple of crashes, but he hasn't been spinning it every weekend. He's been pretty consistent. He's not actually too far off Gasly, considering that he is a rookie. Rookie had one race last year. That's basically
it's still a rookie.
It's still a rookie.
Definitely.
Yeah. But another thing I think is also probably all the heat around Lawson kind of gave him a break because everyone was previously sort of like, oh, how many races will it be until Doohan gets dropped before the start of the season? And then because it became, will Lawson get dropped? That probably gave him a break from the press. And kind of maybe took some of that pressure off. From what I've kind of heard, the people at Alpine like working with him as well, which it can't hurt.
That's probably a big thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's built up a rapport with those people because he was their reserve driver for at least 2 years beforehand and during his junior Formula days as well, when he made an impression in Formula 2 especially, got a few good race wins there. So he had promise and he was rated fairly enough coming into the season. Obviously, people were kind of, because of the Colapinto thing, everyone was kind of writing him off as a five race contract and then he's gone, which isn't the case, obviously. And I think it's a good thing because I think every rookie needs a bit more than 5 races. But, I think Saudi was a tough one for Doohan. I think Gasly got into Q3 and Doohan was out in Q1, which wasn't a good look. But before that, on the whole, he's impressed me for sure. Apart from Australia, but that was exceptional circumstances.
Doesn't count.
I wouldn't say he's impressed me because I don't think he's had any particularly outstanding
relative to what I was expecting.
I don't think he was a disappointment. I don't think I've not been shocked about how bad he was, which I guess was a lot of the narrative going into it.
To be honest, a fairly anonymous start is not a bad thing for Doohan. If, there's no problem with kind of people not paying much attention to you, especially if there was a lot of media attention on you coming in.
I think if he continues to keep out of the walls and isn't too far off Gasly, I think he's got a good chance of staying in that seat for the year. I guess my question now is, do we think he will last the season?
Kind of too early to say, because I think as people stop, like Tsunoda's pretty settled at Red Bull now. As the kind of heat dies down around that, the like spotlight will probably shine back on Doohan. But I'd say he's definitely safe until mid-season. And if he keeps it out of the wall, if he starts to make some progress, anything like that, then I'd say that he's probably okay.
I think keeping a cool head is what's going to save Doohan. Yeah, not trying anything too drastic because, well, his first laps in FP2 in Suzuka, which were kind of unnecessary and drastic.
He was trying something.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I don't want him to do. I want him to make small...
Stop trying, Doohan.
Just make small steps without trying to gain 3/10 at the first corner by keeping the DRS open. I don't think it's necessary. I think he can rely on the talent that he has to kind of carry him through this first season, kind of anonymously, as you said, and just build from there, learn a lot, and just develop as a driver to kind of feel more comfortable in that Alpine, really.
Yeah, I think if Alpine give him the space to fully get to grips with the car, to get settled in the team completely, he has been there for ages, but as a reserve driver, but as a Formula One driver, I kind of can't see any reason why he can't keep developing.
I personally think he'll last the season. In truth, I think the other thing that I like about him is the fact that his demeanour off track seems he seems like a stand-up guy, and he does do his media work in a pretty funny way as well.
Yeah,
I think Gasly also likes him. I think that's another thing.
I've definitely noticed that about Doohan. After Australia, he wasn't giving it the Isaac Hadjar and kind of beating himself up so much. He kind of moved on very quickly, or at least it seemed like he did.
Yeah, especially given it was his home race.
Yeah, exactly. That too. He didn't beat himself up too much like we've seen from Norris, for example.
To be fair, though, on the Gasly teammate thing, I think in terms of Gasly's relationship with his teammate, the bar wasn't that high for Doohan to clear.
That's a fair point. I think I do. Yeah, I think his demeanour will help him, and I think the reason why he's got that calm demeanour is the fact that he's got a role model, I guess, in his dad, who's if people don't know, is a motorcycle 5-time world champion. So he's got good someone good to look up to, put it that way. So I think that's for him. That is probably a big reason why he's so calm. So I hope he lasts the season. I kind of like the guy. So. We'll see what happens there. But that pretty much is all the news that has kind of happened in and around the world of Formula One over the last month. I want to thank my guests Lucy and Daniel for joining me on this episode, and we will see you for the preview of the Miami Grand Prix, which should be coming out either Thursday or Friday. So until next time, I thank you guys for listening, and I hope we see you then. Goodbye.